Hey guys, welcome to the You Are Worthy Network. So excited to be with you on a Monday afternoon. Hope you guys had a tremendous weekend. You guys know I love coming to you live because, especially if it's been a few days like it's been, because I'm hoping that I get to be the one to remind you today that wherever you're at on your journey, whether you've had a really, really good day, I hope it continues for you. Whether your day has been meh, it's a Monday, or maybe it's just really been hard just to get out of bed and get it going today. We've all had days like that. Regardless of where you are on that spectrum, God's not done with your story yet. Not only is He not done with your story yet, He believes in what He's doing in you, and you're worthy of love, respect, and success. So be encouraged by that today. I'm also excited because it's interview time. And I get to introduce you to a fascinating guest today. Steve and I connected, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Uh, Someone that I met recently, common connection, like is so often the case on social media. And Steve reached out to me, and we had a discovery Zoom. And Steve is the real deal. Steve is a plethora of talent. But not only do we want to get into his talent today, I think you're going to be moved by his heart. And so, with that said, let me tell you a little bit about Steve before we jump in, as my phone does weird things. By the way, we're having all kinds of technical issues today. So, hopefully, you're seeing this. It looks like you are from what I can see. Then my phone's acting up. You never know how these things are going to go. The joys of going live, right? Stephen Head is a storyteller, a filmmaker, a visionary creative leader whose work spans 4 decades and 3 continents. As founder of the Stephen Head Agency, he spent 40 years shaping brands through emotionally resonant advertising, earning a reputation for narrative clarity, artistic courage, and strategic insight. A world renowned artist, Stephen is best known for his acclaimed Family Secrets exhibit, a deeply personal and globally recognized body of work that blends vulnerability, visual poetry, and social commentary. His artistic voice later became the foundation for his evolution into documentary filmmaking. Stephen is the founder and principal officer of Great Wonders Productions, a 501c3 nonprofit studio dedicated to telling redemptive, socially impactful stories. He has produced 3 films, most notably The Redemption of Mary Louisa McBroom, a multi era documentary that weaves together history, trauma, healing, and hope. His work has been celebrated for its emotional honesty, meticulous research, and ability to spark meaningful cultural conversations. He is also the creator of the annual Uplift Film Festival, a community rooted celebration of independent filmmaking that champions stories of resilience, justice, and human dignity. Beyond his creative work, Stephen is the founder of Create to Educate, a nonprofit initiative serving at risk children in Uganda. His hands on involvement from building local partnerships to developing sustainable educational programs reflects his belief that storytelling and service are inseparable. As a speaker, Stephen brings a rare blend of artistic depth, lived experience, and strategy clarity. His talks explore themes of healing, creativity, leadership, faith, and the transformative power of honest storytelling. Whether addressing filmmakers, nonprofits, faith communities, or corporate audiences, Stephen challenges listeners to rethink what redemption, courage, and purpose can look like in their own lives. My goodness, I am so impressed by the work you do. Don't know when you have time to sleep, but we'll get into that. Steve, do you want to be Steve or Steven today?
Dave's fine. That's
Steve. awesome to have you with us in the You Are Worthy, Nick. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I've been looking forward to this ever since our first conversation.
We had a really good conversation, and I think I told you back then the group was exploding in growth, and that's continued. And so one of the things that I'm so extremely encouraged by is that I know that eventually, when this is seen over the next 30 days here in Facebook and then beyond in YouTube, that there's people watching all over the world. And so, what little slice of the world are you coming from today, Stephen?
Oh, I'm talking to you from Webb City, Missouri, and that's right in the belly button of America, and right next door to Joplin, Missouri, which I lived in Joplin for many years. We've lived in Webb City for about, well, it'll be 15 years in June. We moved during right after the F5 tornado that destroyed one-third of Joplin, killed about 155 people, injured about 1,500. It was a bad, bad tornado. And we moved um, right after that tornado, and we've lived in Webb City now ever since.
Yeah, for you guys that don't know the geography of America very well, especially if you're from another country, Stephen lives kind of smack dab in the middle, just a smidge west of the Mississippi River, down in southern Missouri, close to the Oklahoma border, and probably not too terribly far from Arkansas. Is that right?
Yeah, right there. We can be in any one of those three states very quickly. Kansas and Oklahoma and Arkansas and Missouri all kind of meet up right here in this corner. And it's called the four-state area for a reason.
Yeah, I forgot about the Kansas part of that being right there at that corridor too. Fascinating. You mentioned the tornado too. Um, Gosh, was that 2011, 12?
That was May 2011. Be 50, the 15th anniversary is in May the 22nd, and we did a documentary about the tornado. That was our very first project. It was called The Butterfly People, and the guy I worked with on this, his name is Gregory Fish, and he has a business called Fish Expressions. And he and our Great Wonders Productions, which is a nonprofit, we partnered in our first year as a nonprofit. We've been a nonprofit for 3 years now. We partnered with Greg to produce a film. Uh, we thought about the butterfly people. He created a documentary about 14 years ago called Steadfast, and it was about the tornado and the rebuilding and how the community came together and everything. And it was a great documentary. But I wanted to follow up with that one on this idea of the butterfly people. Back a few years ago, you could Google that and there would be stories and articles come up. I know the St. Louis Post-Dispatch did an article about the butterfly people, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Katie Couric had a couple of the kids on the Today Show, or I mean, it got all over the world as far as the tornado got the news. And so we've researched, and I found a lot of these kids that were in the news back then. It was very difficult. We found them. We created a 1 hour documentary. It still gets people watching it to this day. Like I said, May 22nd will be the 15th anniversary, and we're going to show Steadfast and the Butterfly People together as a double feature in some of our local theaters here.
Oh, I remember seeing images, before and after images of Joplin. And usually you can go to street corners to get an idea of what used to be there previously. And I remember even, I may be describing this wrong, but like the cement that forms the curbs of a street, like, in front of everybody's house and business,
Right.
that white concrete, it was gone. I mean, you couldn't recognize, I mean, if you weren't, I'm sure there was people there that were confused of where things were. I mean, it was just gone, right?
I'll not ever forget. My wife was a nurse for many years at St. John's Regional Medical Center, which was destroyed. Um, and we lived about, 3 miles from the path of the tornado. So we were safe in our basement. But when we got in the car and we drove over, it would have been early evening, probably 6 or 7 o'clock, about the time it starts getting dark. And we drove up to the hospital. It was kind of on a hill where she worked, and we could not get to the hospital. It was blocked off. People were saying you can't come through here. But we were up on a high hill, and I remember looking out across what was Joplin, and I can't even tell you what it felt like to see nothing but just destruction. It looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. And I remember crying. I don't know why. It just brought tears to my eyes because it was such a sight to see everything was gone.
Wow.
And the 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 days after were tough. What was really cool though, we did something in Joplin, and I don't know if we meant to talk about the tornado when we got started on this, but it's a good topic because it's coming up, the anniversary. But
Mhm.
Joplin did something very, very unique in that we did not wait for FEMA. We did not wait for anybody's help. We just, as a community, it was led by the churches. I went to a church at that time called College Heights Christian Church, and that became an anchor point um, for volunteerism, for supplies to be brought in, and all these kinds of things. And other churches, we all just rolled up our sleeves and worked together, and we went out uh, into that destruction, not only to find initially find survivors and stuff like that and pull people out, but to start trying to help people to where do we go from here? Everything's gone, and we
Yeah.
just started helping each other. And that's what the documentary Steadfast is about. And then the Butterfly People, of course, talks about the experiences kids had that were in. I'll give a spoiler. There was one young girl that her and her brother and her family were at the local um, uh, uh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a big shopping a store, and they were in the parking lot. She was in a truck where a big pole or something came through and impaled her. So she was literally impaled from her shoulder out her back. And she's in this pickup truck, smashed and impaled, and her brother was literally sucked out into the vortex. He came down on his head, his brains were hanging out. And she says in this documentary that she saw in the back seat two angels, and she describes them, that they were there in this time where she was in this crushed pickup, impaled. And I won't tell anymore, but it's in the documentary, and
Yeah.
people watch this documentary that were not believers. I had one lady tell me I didn't believe any of this, and after I saw this documentary, she says, I believe in angels now." Uh,
Wow.
anyway, we got a lot more to talk about besides that,
Yeah.
but that was our first project. The second project was what started Great Wonders Productions, was a story that I had a guy help me write a screenplay about, well, it'd been about almost 8 years ago. And the screenplay was about my grandmother, who I never knew. And her name was Mary Louisa McBroom. And she, when I was doing my genealogy, I found out that she was in an insane asylum in Norman, Oklahoma from 1934 to 1943. 9 years she was in that place. She had 11 kids. One of those was my dad. And I found that very fascinating when I found that information. What was even more cool than that was I was able to, at that time, call and actually get a hold of somebody in that hospital that was still active there. And they said, I asked them if they had any records going back that far, as I also heard that I had a great grandfather that was in that same facility in 1900. And anyway, they were able to find the medical records for her and my great grandfather, and they sent those to me. And I had those medical records for 25 years, Steve. I mean, they sat right now. I'm sitting at my desk, and they were in my desk drawer. Sorry, there's a public safety alert going off on my phone. Anyway, um,
Mm.
I had those records in my desk for 25 years, and there was times when I thought about cleaning out my desk and throwing those away, and I could not bring myself to do that. I'm kind of a historical pack rat, and I thought I was the only person on the whole planet that knew this woman's story. You know, nobody else but me really cared about it. And I just could not bring myself to throw those papers away that I had on her medical records. So anyway, jump ahead, and this guy helped me write the screenplay about her story, and it ended up being my story too because I'm the grandson, and it was a story of generational trauma, childhood abuse, substance abuse, alcoholism, all of this stuff that went back 150 years in my research, and finding real pictures of real people that were my relatives and where all of my story came from. And so we ended up eventually, after 7.5 years, doing the film, but not as a narrative screenplay, but as a documentary. And we just produced that and finished that November, just a couple of months ago. And we've just tweaked it and made some changes to it. So really, it's really a 2026 production if you want to count the final version. Right now, any day now, I think in the next 24 to 48 hours, it will be on Angel Studios as a film that you can vote on. If you're an Angel Guild member, you can actually go and find on the app. If you click on Guild, it'll say vote on full films. And if you go to that vote on full films, you'll be able to find the redemption of Mary Louisa McBroom here any day. And you can watch it there and vote on it. And we would love to
Yeah.
score, you got to score 70 or above to end up being on the Angel Studios um, opportunity level there.
Wow. Let me stop you there.
Sure.
This is fascinating. And I think I know the answer to this, but I want you to tell. So you never met your grandmother, right?
No, no, no. She died 9 years before I was even born. So I
Right.
never knew this woman. But
Right.
let me tell you something. When I got those records in the mail at the post office, I'll never forget that day. I never expected to ever get them. And so we go back, let's say 30, 35 years or whatever, getting those records in the mail and opening that envelope in my truck and going through those records. I got to the very last page and there was a mug shot of her, a front and side view of her. And I looked at the picture after reading all of what she went through. And I sat in my truck and I just had tears running down my face. And I thought,
Mm.
why am I crying? I don't know this woman. I've never met her in my life. But you know, when Jesus told the story about where your heart is, that's where your treasure is also, you know?
Mhm.
And so where your investment is, and I invested so much time and energy and years trying to find out about my family. And so I had invested much of my life and time into this woman and trying to get her story. And when I finally got it and read it, it was where my heart was, and that really was. I don't know. I could not ever throw those away. But now there's a film, there's a documentary, not only telling her story, but how her story affected my story, and my redemption became her redemption. And it's a cool story. I hope people will watch it if they want to see it. They can go to marymcbroom.com. just marymcbroom.com. It'll take them to the movie. It's a $5.99 rental if they want to reach out to me and whatever. But I would love people to watch it. It's so powerful, Steve. I've had people. We showed it in a local theater a few months ago, a few weeks ago. We had like 4 screenings, and most of the people that came out kind of knew who I was and everything. But I'll tell you what, I got hugs from literally 99% of the audience when it came out.
Wow.
People were crying, people were affected, people were touched, and it's got a power to it that just really resonates with people, especially those who have had similar stories in their life, you know.
Wow. And so, yeah, I think you sent me the website for this, so we'll make sure we have that in the
Yeah.
description notes afterwards, so people can definitely check it out if they choose. So, like, I know you have huge dreams for this project, and you're right on the cusp too of some of those goals. Is what
Right.
you're describing here with us the beginning of that process?
You know, let me take just a moment. The reason we even have Great Wonders Productions is because we were we were so frustrated. We had this screenplay that this gentleman helped me write, like I said, about almost 8 years ago. And I thought it was such a good story. If I just got it in the hands of the right movie production studio, they would read it and they would go, man, we got to make this film. But what happens when you go through that process? I sent that screenplay out to studios all over the country, and I picked the ones that I thought would be the ones that would be interested in a story like this, a redemption story. And they would come back unopened, refused.
Mm.
And I put a lot of effort into being a guy with 40, like you said, 40 years of advertising and marketing experience. I took the screenplay, I had them printed, and I put it on a silver platter, not real silver, but a silver platter I got at the Dollar General store, or whatever. And I put it on the silver platter, and we printed a card like an invitation to read the screenplay, and we put it in an envelope, and the envelope said on the outside, an invitation on a silver platter. And so I went to all that trouble with some bubble wrap and a box that fit that, and
Wow.
it cost a little bit extra to send that out. So we sent those out, maybe 60 or 80 of those to studios. And when the boxes started coming back unopened, I can't tell you how devastating that felt. And so it
Yeah.
was a moment in time where you say, do I just give up and say, okay, this isn't working, let's move on? Uh, what other option is there? Well, I had a guy named, his name was Nathaniel Dunn, and he had read the screenplay and he thought it was great. And so he was local and we got together for coffee and he says, maybe we just work on making a concept trailer. And so for about 6 months, we worked on this idea of creating a concept trailer. But when you're doing something like that with historical period pieces and insane asylums, and it takes some money just to do a little 3-minute trailer. And it got to a point one morning, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I woke up, I had the need to go to the restroom in the middle of the night. So I come back to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying there in bed and I have these thoughts running through my head, and I know they weren't my thoughts. I I really know God was telling me that it's not about making a buck, it's about making a difference. And you need to do this as a nonprofit. I don't know. That's where the idea came from. And I got up because I knew if I didn't get up and write this stuff down, I like you have a dream and then you remember the next morning, well, I had this great dream, but I can't remember. I didn't want to forget. So I got up and I wrote down everything that had been running through my head. I laid the notepad down and I went back to bed. I got up about, 7 or whenever I normally get up, and there was the notepad. I had written all this stuff down. I thought I'll get up and I'll type it all up. So I typed it all up and I just called it Random Thoughts at 4 a.m. And anyway, that was in December 3 years ago. Well, it'll be 3 years ago in December. And it was about a month later, I had some people I talked to about this idea, and we ended up doing it. I mean, we ended up launching this nonprofit, and that's how it all started. And now we have 3 years under our belt. We have a film that's actually three films, and the McBroom documentary ended up being, I mean, instead of a narrative, it became a documentary, a little bit more affordable way to do it. But God took me on this 8 year journey to get that film made. And I can go back over those 8 years, even the times when the boxes were coming back unopened and everything else. I think about Joseph, and he had those dreams about his brothers, and they ended up
Yeah.
selling him off to Egypt. And he's in the jail in Egypt, for something he didn't even do. And I'm sure he thought, I don't know what he thought, but I know he probably thought God was not answering his prayers. And it wasn't until the drought and his brothers come to Egypt and they come in and they don't recognize him and they bow down and he's going, "That's the dream I had. That's the dream. Here they are." And he couldn't say anything, but he knew that that was God gave him that dream and here they are. And that's I can't tell you how I look back over the 8 years and I think, okay, Joseph was in prison for 7 years. I wonder what he thought. The discouragement, the times where it's like, just give up and move on. No, I didn't. And God has brought it this far, and He's not through yet. Yes, would I like to have a score of 70 or 80 on Angel Studios? Yes. We've already done this 3 times and we've gotten 50s, but we haven't got to the 70 mark. So I don't know if we'll ever get there. If God doesn't make that happen, He's got something else in store. But I know that this movie is touching lives. I've seen it happen. I've seen it. I've seen it. And whatever God does with this, it's a God story. And I just got to trust Him and keep letting Him be the driver. And I'm just sitting in the back, letting Him take me on the journey.
Yeah, I mean there's so many great stories in that. And let me elaborate a little bit. So I love your perseverance. I know you've only given us a summary of what that rejection looked like, but that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And you put extra time and money into it, more than time and money. I mean, your heart was into it, and then coming back in one after another. And that's so discouraging. And I'm sure you had your moments, you're human, but you persevered and you had faith in what God was doing in this project. And I'm sure at some point early on, if this would just touch one person, because I know your heart well enough to know that that was your heart. And yes, it hasn't gotten the 70s, review yet. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you've gotten to experience being in the room when people have watched it. And
Mhm.
you've been in the room when they've come up to you in tears and hugged you. And so you know the impact is even greater than you could have ever fathomed when you started it. So we have to trust that whatever number God decides on the audience, it's going to continue to impact people that watch it. And quite frankly, for 5.99, it sounds like a great deal for sure. I am interested in this whole process of creating it and the journey you've been on for your own healing. Has this process of creating this been therapeutic for you in any way?
Oh, I'm telling you, Steve, it's all part of an overall thing, goes even beyond the 7 and 8 years I'm talking about for the movie itself. Let me jump back 15 to 20 years. I was invited by someone at our church to go to Michigan and go through something called at that time, well, it's called The Journey, and it was a 12-week program for adult survivors of abuse. It's based off of a book by Dan Allender called The Wounded Heart.
Yep.
Okay. And so I went through this program up there to train to come back and lead it at our church. And as I went through that program, it was a mile marker in my road, in my journey of my life. I didn't realize until that moment, and I was in my 50s, I did not realize that all of that childhood trauma, all of that pain that I carried, all of the alcoholism, the suicide attempts, all the stuff I'd been through was all rooted in something that was still not really fully healed. And that healing, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a healing process that takes time. But one of the things that I learned in that process was one of the things that keeps people from getting to the healing is the shame. They don't want to talk about their story. They don't want to talk about what happened because a lot of people feel like what happened to them was their fault. And let me tell you, if you were abused as a child or whatever, all the pain you had as a child, that was not your fault. That
Right.
was somebody else's guilt and shame, not your shame. But anyway, after I went through that, there was a time in my childhood that I wanted to be an artist, and my mother. This is all in the film. This is all in the film, and people can watch it and get the whole story. But um, you remember the little matchbook covers and stuff like Draw Tippy the Turtle and
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And you could draw that picture, the pirate, whatever, send it in and maybe get a scholarship to this art school. I did that when I was a kid and I took my picture to my mom and I wanted to send it in. And of course, my mom was uneducated. She was from Oklahoma. She was like a wounded person herself. I mean, we were from a very dysfunctional family, but she didn't know any artists in her life. I know that. And I come to her and I want to be an artist. And she turned around and looked at me and she says, "Oh, you're going to do great wonders." And she said that like a sarcastic put down. Now you can kind of see how I came up with the name Great Wonders
Yeah.
Productions. Okay. Great Wonders Productions. I chose that name out of a painful thing that happened, 60 years ago. It was a rejection from my own mother, who should be, God designed us to be nurtured and loved and brought up by parents that are supposed to be image bearers of him. And when you come from a broken family that does not give you that, you end up going through your childhood with an empty tank.
Yeah.
Okay, and that empty tank could be empty for any number of reasons, but then as you get into, like with myself, as I got into my teenage years and my early young years and 20s, there's an emptiness that sometimes
Hmm.
a lot of us fill that up with the wrong stuff, like
Yep.
alcohol or drugs or sex or any number of things that you could use to kind of try to fill that void. If you're not filling it with God, you can go for years and years and years filling it with all the wrong things that literally make things worse. And that's what I did for the first half of my life. And the movie talks about those times. The movie covers those times. It goes all the way back to my childhood, my Vietnam days, but it doesn't stop there. It goes on to how God took that brokenness and took that emptiness. Um, the times when you just want to give up and die. I had several of those, and I should not be sitting here right now. I should have been gone 40 years ago. But the second half of my life, God gave me a chance to become a new person, as the scriptures say. He gave me a chance to transform my mind into his likeness. And that transformation process is not like you just go and have a religious experience and come home and you're all well. No, it's a
Mm.
transform means, I always tell people when you're wanting to plant, tomatoes or something in a garden, you get the seeds in the packet and you put it in the dirt and water it, and then you maybe even fertilize it and whatever, you put it in the sunshine, and you try to give it everything it needs to get that seed to sprout and grow. God does that with us in our life when we have been dead. I mean, we all are seeds ready to for the sower to sow. We are all seeds, and God wants us to grow and become productive and to bear fruit. And you can't bear fruit if the seed has never been germinated. And sometimes that germination process involves some fertilizer,
That's
And
true.
life can give you a lot of that fertilizer. But it's amazing when you start growing little by little, when you're I don't know, when you're poking your head above that dirt and that fertilizer, and you're seeing the light for the first time, and you're feeling his presence shining on you. It's a powerful thing. And then it's such a blessing to look back over time and say, I remember being that little unsprouted seed. And now I'm like the tree that he talks about, the mustard tree that the birds come and nest in the branches. And it doesn't happen in a day or two or a week or two or a month or two. It happens over time, and I'm still growing. I'm still learning.
Sure.
I'll be 74 in June, and I'm still learning, and I'm still doing things that I've never done before. And I'm still challenged to, I'm working, before you called, I was working on a project. I'm not going to say, but I'm working on a project for the city I live in. I don't want to spoil it right now, but it's a very grandiose idea, and no one's ever done it in all the history of this city. No one's ever done it, and I'm going to get it done. Okay, I just am that kind of person.
Okay. All right. So I was about to ask you. Yeah, so you can't give us a sneak peek at
Oh, well, I'll
that.
give you a
No,
sneak
no.
peek.
Hang on, hang on.
Yeah.
So I want you to share one project. Maybe you can give us a sneak peek at. If it's not that one, it might be another
Okay.
one. You choose.
Okay. Can I talk about create to educate?
Yeah, sure.
That's a project.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
made as an artist that has had my family secrets exhibit, which is all pieces I've done over the. I did become an artist in my 50s. It's something that I wasn't sure about, but I started doing artwork. One of the first pieces of art I did was a painting about shame that I learned about
Oh, wow.
in Michigan. I did a painting about shame, and I started doing pieces about my own family, about my own brokenness, about my people in my family, and it became that was the precursor to the movie itself. The Family Secrets exhibit was a. I did one piece. I'll use an example. Uh, I did one piece about my grandmother. That's the one called The Redemption of Mary Louisa McBroom.
Mhm.
That's. But I did one piece about the time when I was about 9 or 10, and I was sexually molested by a old relative of a distant relative of a cousin of my mom's or something. Anyway, this happened back in my childhood, and I carried that
Mhm.
around with me for many years before I ever even told my mother. I told her when I was about 16 years old, but I didn't do anything with that. That was just deep inside. It was something that happened. It was deep inside my whole life. So as a 56-year-old man, 46 years down the road from that incident, I decided to do an art piece called Visiting Uncle Oscar. Okay. And I wanted to put a piece of art together about that experience that I had. Now, I told you I did a painting about shame.
Mhm.
And I know I was 10 years old. That was not my fault. That was not anything I did to feel guilty about or shameful about. But I carried that in my gut, in my soul, as a shameful thing I could not talk to people about. And so doing a piece of art about that and then actually taking that piece of art and putting it in a show at a gallery And then actually having a news person from the local TV station come out and interview me about that show and talk to me about that piece of art. And I remember talking to that TV reporter, and I'm thinking it was hard enough for me to do this piece of art and put it on this wall in this gallery, but now you're going to talk about it and show it all over the whole community here on TV. That was a hard thing to do. But you know what? By letting that story not only get out of my heart and let it be told, but get to the point where it could go public all over the community, and now all over the world. That piece of art has touched people in many different countries and stuff. So my artwork, what started out as this kid that was told, "Oh, you're going to do great wonders," and waited till he was in his 50s and then started doing art about the pain that he carried for half that century, you know. It just blows my mind, Steve, how God has used that art to touch people's lives all over the place, people I've never met. I had my art exhibit at a place up in St. Joseph, Missouri called the Glore Psychiatric Museum. And it's a museum that is actually an old insane asylum of Missouri. And you go into this museum and you see how people were treated back in those days in this insane asylum. Well, my grandmother was in one too. It was in Norman, Oklahoma, but they're all the same basically. The lobotomies, all the things they did to people back those days. And I had that art exhibit there, and I had a little box and pieces of paper and a pen and a sign that says, if any of my artwork touched you in any way, or if you'd like to leave a message for the artist, write it down and put it in this box. And I had people from all over the world, literally, that were coming through that museum, write me notes and put it in that box. And I would get these notes from people that I never knew. And I'd read some of them and they'd make me cry, you know?
Mm,
I'm like, wow,
mm,
somebody I didn't even know is telling me, thank you, thank you, thank you for the visiting Uncle Oscar or this or that. That happened to me. You know, they would immediately start sharing their own stories. And so that art exhibit and those historical documents from my grandmother and all the stuff I kept in my desk drawer, all that became the movie, the documentary. And so that documentary now is a compilation of all the art pieces and everything and telling the whole story in a new form, a cinematic piece of art. And so this documentary is my final piece of art to tell all the stories at one time and to touch people like those art pieces were touching people in the art shows. And when I did an artist talk, people would come up to me afterwards and want to tell me their story and they would want a hug. And I don't know, Steve, there's just something really powerful that you could take your story and put it in a visual piece of art or and it touches somebody in a visceral way that gives them permission to automatically want to tell something that they have in their heart they've never told anybody. But I can
yeah,
tell Steve because he told me his story. I can tell him
yeah.
my story. And it's contagious and it's healing in a contagious way. I hope this documentary gets people talking. I hope people tell their stories. I hope they get help. I hope they're inspired to see that, yeah, I was desperate. I was suicidal, but God gave me a chance to take that pain and put it into good use in the kingdom. You know, it's an amazing thing.
Wow. I mean, your whole story is in alignment, and I don't even know if you know this, but our if you go to the banner of our network, at the very bottom it says your story's not over yet. And your whole story is reflective of that, the things that you've overcome. And as you were talking about, I don't know if you use the word vulnerability or not, but basically that's what we're talking about. Like when you're vulnerable with other people, when you lead with vulnerability, look at the compound effect that you get back.
Right,
It's
right.
it's it's priceless. Um, I, I time has flown by, But I want you to know that I love your story. I love your work. I love your energy and all the things that you still got going on in the can right now, at almost 74 years old. And it's just remarkable the life that you've lived. And I know we've only briefly really touched on it, but you know, I think it's remarkable the lineage you come from and the generational trauma that you have overcome. And like you said, you're not you haven't arrived at perfection. Nobody is, right? But how much you've overcome and you have broke the chains. And I always say, and you've said it a couple times here, that folks listening, what Stephen had done to him was not his fault, not at all. Can't be more emphatic about that, right? And if you've had a similar traumatic experience or something different but still traumatic, it's not your fault either. Now, I say this in the most compassionate way. The healing is still your responsibility.
Mhm.
Is it fair? No.
Right.
Quite frankly, it's not. But that healing, you owe yourself that healing to be all that God created you to be. And because there's people out there that are going to be affected by your healing, just like Stephen's been able to give back through his healing. So I want you to hear that clearly. What happens is not your fault, but we need you to get whatever tools you need to get to put in your tool belt. And it's not overnight. Stephen said that too. It's not overnight. It's a lifetime of collecting healthy tools that will help you break those chains so that now you've probably heard, I'm getting off on my preacher
That's fine.
tantrum here, but hurt people do hurt people. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's end this part on a good note. Healed people also want to be on the healing team.
Right.
And that's what Steven's done. He's on the healing team now, and we need more people on that team in this difficult world. Steven, tell folks where they can learn more about you and the work you're doing.
If they really, if you just go to Google and Google the redemption of Mary Louisa McBroom, they'll get all kinds of stuff on that. If they Google Stephen Head or whatever, Webb City, Missouri, you'll get all kinds of stuff about my art, about everything. You can Google me and there's a lot that you can dive into, whether it be the art or the movie or different things. But I've created another nonprofit that's helping kids in Africa. I wish we had time to talk about it. It's in the movie,
Wow.
createtoeducate.us. Check that out. But I want to end with this, Steve. You said the healing process is an ongoing thing. Yes, it is. And I'll tell you what, I cannot wait. I'm still growing. I'm still changing. But every morning when the sun shines through the bathroom mirror in our room, when I know it's daylight coming, I cannot wait to get up every morning. Every day is a new day to do something great. And I just am excited for every day of life. I didn't always feel that way. I didn't always feel that way. And I
Yeah.
did not find any joy. I did not see any purpose in even living at one point in my life. But God can make your life so joyful, so purposeful that you just cannot wait to get up and have another day at it. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to genuinely thank you for sharing your experiences, your talents, and I was right that God has showed your heart here, a heart of faith, a heart of service, a heart of giving back, and a heart of perseverance that came shining through. So I want to thank you for that. And I'll offer you this, Stephen, like as things continue to evolve with your projects, you have an open invitation to come back as those evolve.
Okay, that sounds good. There might be some good updates down the road.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. This has been awesome. Stephen, thank you for being our esteemed guest today. It's been incredible. Guys, I hope you've heard through Stephen's story, through his testimony, that he had some really, really low points in his life.
Mm.
I mean, pretty extreme, right?
Oh, well. When you want to do yourself in, you're at a low point, and
That's just,
there's I should not seriously I should not be here. I should not be here, but God gave me another chance for a reason, and looking back, I can tell now what that was all about, and I am so grateful, so grateful. I hope that comes across that way that there is hope. There's a God that loves you, and there's always a redemption for anybody that wants it. It's all it's a banquet. Let me end with this verse that blessed are those who hunger and thirst
there's,
after righteousness. They will be filled, but you've
yep.
got to be hungry and thirsty. And sometimes that takes brokenness.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you ended it with scripture. I appreciate that. God wasn't done with Stephen's story. He's not done with yours either. Be encouraged as you go into your Monday evening. You are worthy. Appreciate each one of you. Till next time, God bless.